Oh, I love it.
Okay, welcome, John
Hi.
Allen. First of all, I'm going to have to say thank you to Scandic Hotel. This is the ambassador, apparently, ambassador Dramen Hotel. I hope I got it right. So it's a special thank you for George, who's the event manager, for offering this space for us where we are here today. Beautiful place, I must admit. We took a little tour before we set it up here. I'm welcoming back John Allen. You probably heard a little bit about him in my previous season on the TODcast. So for those who don't know him, I'm going to just read a little bit brief detail about who he is. He's born in Ohio, USA, and he moved to Norway in 2002 with his Norwegian wife. He has 2 kids here, but you have also a daughter back in the US from a previous relationship. He was a U.S. Marine and also a former police officer dealing with narcotics and gang-related, as well as a crime scene technician. This reminds me of some kind of CSI type of TV series in my head right now. Yeah, exactly. Very cool. So in Norway, he started working as a project leader, a music tech teacher, as well as working for the child services or the child protection services here, as well as worked as a consultant for the Norwegian Police Immigration Services. Are you still doing that now?
No, I'm all done with that.
Yeah, okay. So now he's currently a writer, a singer-songwriter, a champion and record-holding a powerlifter, a stand-up comedian, and runs his own podcast called The Coming Home. And then he's now also a radio program producer, creator, and host. That is a huge amount of list that you got there.
I get tired sometimes.
But, I think all of this history that you have here, all this experience is what got you here today, I feel like,
I think so. I've always tried to take my experiences, good or bad, productive or not, and apply them in a way that propels me forward. And at times lift me up, because that's 2 different things. But I try to use my experiences, I try to use my background and the things that I've learned and put it to use for something good.
Yeah, and that's why it's really, really cool to have you on this season, where we're talking about, surviving and thriving in Norway. And I don't want this to have an impression that people coming onto this particular podcast that we're just talking about thriving,
Yes.
and that we're just, kind of ignoring the surviving part. Because I know, for me, I personally don't feel like I'm thriving, but I am surviving.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I was talking to another lady last week, and she uses this kind of distinction, like she's thriving spiritually, on a sort of mental basis, but she's surviving, on the other aspects of life. So I don't know what you think about
the
that.
thing that comes to mind for me is that, life is a conglomerate of thriving, surviving, not surviving. There can be aspects of your life that are completely on hold or dead, not surviving. And we're also on a time continuum. So there can be periods where we're thriving, periods where we're not. And it's a part of life. And again, and also, I think it's very good that you said that we don't want to put the impression that if you're only, and I put that in air quotes, if you're only surviving, then there's something wrong with you. Because when I think of survivor, I think of strength.
Right.
I think of someone who has at least been exposed to a lot of things that they can possibly learn from. Now, in that survival process, it can weigh a ton on your psyche. And sometimes those learning moments or that opportunity to learn or to propel yourself forward can be hidden from you. But there always comes these moments of clarity, these moments of peace, the eye of the storm.
Right.
And that's where we have to be trained ahead of time to pick up on those moments, those opportunities where we can take a less than positive experience and turn it into something that, if it's not positive immediately, it can be something positive, something that you can use later. I like to say that I take my less than positive experiences and I put them in an invisible backpack that I carry around with me at all times. And when the spirit moves me or when the opportunity fits, I'll reach in there, not even looking, but I'll just pull one of those experiences out. Oh yeah, this. And then I go into that process where I deconstruct that experience and find the learning moment or find the propellant that can push me forward or lift me up.
Yeah, I think we're quite similar in that sense because, you know, I've survived quite a lot of stuff. You know, I have been in public saying that I survived, you know, domestic violence at home, and, you know, and I still have survived quite a lot of things. And I think you're right. And when we go through those moments, we start looking back and going like, what's the lesson here? You know, what can we learn here? And also you kind of look into your own strengths. You sometimes you don't even realize you have that kind of strength until that moment happens.
Well,
I think
that image of that invisible backpack, again, you know, you don't really remember everything that you've put in there. You may not have even put it in there yourself, but it is there. And again, if we're open to these moments where we can learn from our past, and that doesn't mean you go back and you feel sorry for yourself because of your past. It means that you take that deep breath and just jump into your past and find what you can learn. Find your successes in the middle of all of that trauma, you know, and feel good about that. In other words, a victim of domestic abuse who has gone on to start their own family, and that family is a loving family, they can look back at that domestic abuse and begin to pull out lessons that brought them to this period in their life where they can actually surpass or rise above all of that trauma and start a beautiful family.
Yeah, and also
I did it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if I can do it, and I'm no smarter than anyone else. I have many faults, and I'm not saying that if you can't do what I do, there's something wrong with you. I'm saying that I am probably just as or more faulty than you, but I managed to do this. So I want to put that story out there as an element of hope for other people.
I think you kind of hit the nail there, because I think like a lot of us who survive certain things in our lives, multiple things, and when we do come out with a story and we say like you could also be able to kind of get through it and also have your elements, it's not trying to kind of say like we're not validating your experiences or anything, or saying like you have to be like us or anything like that, but it's like I feel like once you hit rock bottom, there's only one way up. And that's up. Yes,
and I'm all about validating those negative experiences. Of course, you know, everyone needs a shoulder to lean on, a shoulder to cry on, and there's a time and a place for that. But I believe that a good support network or you as a supporter, you'll find that moment where you're like, hey, lift your chin up and look at me now. Now let's talk about this. What can we do to change this situation? And God bless the people who fill that role as being that person that lifts the chin of someone who's downtrodden. Lift their chin up, look them in the eye, and see if you can help them to see that there is a path forward for them.
Who was that one person for you then when you were at your lowest, you know, and when you're in those surviving moments?
My wife.
Your wife.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. She is... she's my angel. I say she saved my life. She changed my life, and she has this duality. You know, like I said, you know, listening to people and supporting them in their moments of weakness, their moments where they're exposing the themselves from the trauma. That is a good thing to do. But again, it's also that moment where you lift their chin up and try and help them to move on. And my wife manages that perfectly. She'll listen to me when I talk about bad experiences, from whether it's from my childhood or from adulthood. She'll listen, but then right when I'm ready for it, she seems to know when I'm ready for that moment where, okay, hey, yes, that happened, but how are we going to get out of it, or how are we going to fix it? And that's just always a beautiful moment. And I think it's quite demanding to be that person, because you have to have your antenna up, because you don't want to insult someone and negate their or erase their trauma by Oh yeah, stop talking about that. Come on, look, things are better.
Right.
That's not how it works.
No.
It's a very gentle, it's a very subtle moment in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or parent to child, child to parent even, husband to wife. It's a very gentle and subtle moment. But when it happens, you as the person who has been victimized feel an enormous sense of relief. Because when we're victimized, it's very easy for us to think that no one cares, that we're not worthy. But then you have that person who does care, and who does think you're worthy because they want to try and help you to move forward. And it's just a beautiful experience.
I think it's also allowing that space to sit with your pain, right?
Yes.
It's again processing the emotional, parts of it really that could be ups and downs, and I'm sure there's certain stages, and I'm probably getting this wrong, you get through certain stages of anger to denial and so forth. So you have to kind of work through all that process. I don't know about you, but I feel like for you, it's like you've gone through both physical and emotional pain.
Yes.
You had 9 surgeries already now for your shoulder.
And when I say 9, I'm guessing. I've actually lost count.
Oh, really? Okay.
8, 9, 10, let's say between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
It's a lot,
It's a lot. And as people see on film, if they're watching this on film, I'm still in a period of this process where I have to support my arm, and
right.
So it's a thing that I'm constantly aware of, this physical pain, this sense of being set back from the ultimate me physically. I am a competitive power lifter, and I can't do that now. So a big hole is in my life right now that I have to fill in some way. And there comes the great support that I get from my wife and others that say and do things to help guide me through that hole in my life structure, which is that hole is powerlifting. It's gone now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that hole was actually filled in by the podcast you're doing with the radio station you're in.
Partially, because a lot of people, I want to explain something. Powerlifting for me is not just the physical. It is a huge mental, I would say I am more involved mentally with powerlifting than I am physically. Going into the gym and following my program, that's easy. The hard part, the exciting part, the part that I gain the most from is that mental process of making a goal. Okay, I want to lift this many kilos, or I want to set this record. And then constructing the path. I'm a construction artist. I'm constructing the path to that goal because I'm not there yet. I have to train and work towards being stronger. And that path up to that is a beautiful, exciting, challenging, frustrating, painful, but joyous path. So that process of constructing that path is the beauty of powerlifting for me, because that is a lesson that I can apply to other aspects of my life. So in that sense, it's been relatively easy to fill that hole. I'm not missing that much from not being able to train like I want to. But again, I do feel the physical challenges of all these surgeries. Absolutely.
So when it comes with now you have a new sort of slight, I would say quite a new direction, but at the same time it's kind of following through this path that you've been doing from the podcast, where you did it because you want to find some kind of meaning after your son passed away, and then it got to the point where you were, I think, was invited by a radio station to host. Is that right?
Yes. I had been on the two mainstream media houses here in Norway. I had been on TV2 and NRK, where they interviewed me about a few different cases that had to do with racism, police work, social happenings in the United States. And so I presented my thoughts and what I meant in Norwegian. And a radio station, a program leader on a radio station saw me, and this can attest to that old saying, you never know who's watching, because it turned out that this guy saw me every time I was on television, on the evening news, and he started building this idea of inviting me to run a show on his radio station. So in the end, he contacted me and he asked me to make my own program and do it in English.
Oh wow! In English, yeah, that's cool.
In English on this Norwegian radio station. So I thought about it for about 2 seconds, and then I said yes.
That was a very quick decision.
Yeah.
There.
So and it was a wonderful experience, and I say was because I'm no longer there, because I had so much fun doing it, that form of expression, and it wasn't just the music that I chose to play. It was also the guests that because it was a 2-hour program, 1 hour of talk radio with a little bit of music. Talk radio usually with a guest. I think I had 2 broadcasts where it was just me talking, and then 1 hour of music with my comments in between. So I tilted my show to be basically an extension of my podcast, wherein I'm inviting guests that inspire me, that motivate me, guests that I think I can learn something from. Which will then make me stronger, to put me in a better position to be able to help my friends, my family, and myself. So that's what the radio program was about, and it was about relaxing. I always challenge people, if you're listening to this, stop what you're doing. Don't be doing housework. Don't be running around chasing your kids. Put all that stuff aside and sit still for 2 hours and just listen. And people did that, and people responded to that. And the feedback was so positive. So now where I am is I'm finished working there, and I'm going to start my own internet radio station, and I'm just going to expand on that idea. That's where I am now.
And you started running several pages right now that I can see in trying to get raising funds to start this internet radio. How's that been going?
It's been going rather slow. I'll put it to you this way. I have not formally started the radio station yet because I lack funding. So I want to put the word out there. If people go to my social media, at John Allen Pod, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Forget about Twitter, I'm not very active there, but Facebook and Instagram, at John Allen Pod. If you go there, at the link in my bio, you will see where you can click in and donate. I look at it this way. I don't. It's kind of uncomfortable to go around with my hand out asking.
I understand that. Yeah.
But my idea is if you follow someone on social media, if you follow me on social media, all told on all different platforms, I have roughly 6,000 followers. And if you love me enough, if you like my content enough, if you get something out of my content, I ask, is it worth $1 a month? Because if 6,000 people paid $1 a month, problem solved. I have more than, and I'm talking dollar, not Norwegian crown. $6,000 a month. That's a lot of money towards a project. But it's a very small drop, $1 from each participant, each donor. But what I say to people is that if you like what I'm doing, if you support what I'm doing, please throw $1 into the pot, and I'll give that back to you in uplifting content. I'll give that back to you in teachable moments. Now, I'm not saying I'm some kind of guru and people should, listen when John Allen speaks. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I will have conversations with guests who I almost guarantee can leave something on the table that you, the listener, can take and learn from. So that's my dream for my radio station. I want to have, of course, good music, but I want to have good teachable moments through conversations with people who are 10 times smarter than me. That's my goal. And I think I totally understand what you mean by handing out. At the OSDS we've been struggling a lot financially, and we've been looking for funding, and you can sit for hours writing applications of getting funding or and so forth, and but crowdfunding is much easier actually. But in practical terms, it's difficult because how do you? It's for me. It's a very uncomfortable thing again to ask for money, but at the same time, I think of people who I support, and I throw a couple dollars a month to them. Again, for me, $2 is nothing. What is that? 20 kroners roughly. That's nothing. But for that person who's trying to fund something that I think is worthwhile as a viewer or as a consumer, if they have a following of 10,000 people who all give $1 a month, funding problem solved. So when I look at people like us, brown-skinned people or people who have immigrated to Norway, we struggle to have our voices heard.
Exactly.
So I put the challenge out there. If you are an immigrant to Norway and you feel that we are not seen and heard enough, find places like the Oslo desk or John Allen and give just $1 a month if that's all you can do. Of course, if there's some philanthropist out there who can give 100,000 kroners to the Oslo desk, by all means, please do that. Please do that now. But I look at it as a movement among the people. And when I say the people, I mean normal people like you and I, like these beautiful people here on your production team. We're not wealthy, but we do support that which we support. So let's do that in the monetary sense that we can. $1 a month from 6,000 people, my funding problem is solved. And I'll give it back 10 times over in content.
So just to say that previously we did do some kind of crowdfunding on Facebook and other means to see which one works well. And we had one on Ko-fi, but then we decided to shut that down because I think people didn't understand it. And actually you got the better one, which is the Buy Me a Coffee. Basically that's
it's
what
cute.
That's the whole entire concept about it, but it just didn't work out for us. So we're going to open up a Patreon page and also some other ones hopefully as the week comes along during this month. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Like, we're trying to put the voices out, and I think that's what makes you unique in certain ways, is that you've gone through so much. Honestly, I still admire you so much for all the things you do. Honestly, and all the background, and it really was for me another uplifting moment. Even though you felt like I inspired you, but I also got equally inspired by you and the work you do.
You definitely inspired me, and thank you for putting a voice to what you call my inspiration to you. Thank you, because again, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put content out there. I'm trying to put my story out there. I'm trying to say and do things that can be uplifting to people at the same time as it's uplifting to me. I can have a podcast episode where I speak with whoever it may be, and I'll carry that conversation with me for sometimes weeks at a time because it was so uplifting. And I hope that can be reflected in my listenership. And again, if you care that much, if you feel that much movement by the work that I do, or that the work that the Oslo desk does, or that any organization or startup that's been begun by a person of color, if you really support it, throw $1 a month. Just make that commitment, $1 a month, and I guarantee you'll get that back. You'll get that back in the uplifting moments, because so many of us are inspiring. So many of us inspire each other. But I think what we're missing, I know what I'm missing, is that feedback. By seeing on the ground what effect it is having. We are too silent about that. When something moves us, we need to say it moved us and spread the word. And then all of a sudden here in Norway, black and brown people will have what? A voice. Because people are literally talking about what we're doing.
And I think it's really interesting you said that, the fact about feedback, and that can help us during the moments of when we're, surviving, really. I think in times of surviving. And I was actually last year was very, very close to shutting down the Oslo desk, like I explained to you.
Yes.
Had it not been like you messaging me, and also some other people who are messaging me, telling me, don't shut down the Oslo desk, you're so important. That's when I realized that.
And that's the feedback I'm talking about.
Making some impact that we already feel like we've done. So I feel like, your style and your creativity with the Coming Home podcast was very interesting. I listened to it. You have so many interesting guests. I must admit. I feel damn, I want to talk to them too at times. So hopefully we'll be collaborating at some point, in the future, for sure. And I think you're also running these seminars, regarding how do you deal with physical pain as well as emotional pain as well. So I'm guessing the takeaway is, I guess what my question is like, what would your takeaway message be, in doing that? Because I recently just done an operation. I look like I'm healthy. I don't have like pillars on it, but I'm actually in pain right now. So after this, I'm going to take some paracetamol right after.
I think they have a steam bath here at the hotel somewhere.
I think I need a good massage in the spa right now. I feel like, I think we both deserve it in a certain way. So for me, it's like, what is your takeaway messages when it comes to, dealing with both pains, your physical and emotional?
Yeah, let me see how I can talk about my seminar series that's going right now. I don't want to say too much because I want people to get it when they show up at the seminar. But what it is, it's a Facebook online paid event. 65 kroners, it's nothing. $7.30, I believe it is, in US dollars. And what they're going to get is a series of live seminars that I'll give, talking about how because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a mental health expert, but I can share my story. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling people how I deal with physical and emotional pain and still be able to keep going and be productive. When people get swamped with physical pain, it can lead to depression, which then triggers things in our brain and nervous system, which leads to more pain. And it just becomes this circle, and we just swirl deeper and deeper down that toilet of inactivity, depression. So I'm talking about certain things that I have done up through especially the last 5 years, to combat that effectively and successfully. So again, I'm not a mental health expert, but I can share my story. So that's what I'm doing. And the first night was, I had a great response. I had some technical difficulties getting the live feed up, but coming up now this Thursday will be the second installment. There'll be 5 installments altogether. And at the end of it, there will be a heavily edited, very professional seminar series of 5 modules, if you will, that will be an online digital product that people can buy into. And it's going to be expanded to somewhat of a course journey that they can go through that has a support group. So that's my plans for that. That's something that's going to be heavily promoted on the radio station when that's up and running. But until then, I'll promote it heavily in guest appearances like this. I'll promote it on my podcast, and I hope that more people join. And again, they can find that on my social media at John Allen Pod, and it routes you through to Facebook, where you get it on the live feed every Thursday.
Cool. And I think like you also mentioned you're going to write a book. Is that right?
I'm in that process as well. The book is going to be in conjunction with this seminar series.
Right.
It's not going to be a long book, but it's going to be a more detailed storytelling of my journey through physical, mental, emotional pain. And again, the hope is that it can inspire someone out there.
I feel like, with you, like when you're going through something, especially when it came with the pandemic, it was like you're very focused on the podcast, and that kind of fit up your time.
Yes.
I think it feels like in the time of like when you're, stuck, I feel like you create.
Yes.
And I think like we're similar in that sense. Like we like to create either space for ourselves to kind of understand with others as we go along, which is one of the reasons why we did this season, is because like I had this conversation with Andre, who's the cameraman behind here. You can't see him yet, but I was, and I'm still looking for jobs in certain ways. And the last 3 months I've been looking for work, and I've been coming in and out in job interviews, and I got to a point where I'm like, okay, this is the last one. I'm like, I went through the third round and I got extremely tired with that rejection, and then I kind of went, okay, I need to talk to someone. And Andre is usually the first one I talk to, like going, this is what's happening to me, and I end up crying my eyes out almost. And then it got to the point where I started discussing with him, like, when do we actually start surviving and start thriving? So how's that for you, and how do you feel that roadmap is for you to get to the point where you're thriving?
My roadmap it's been a series of starts and stops. It's been a series of success and failure. So it's been like this, but it's also been over time gradually rising closer to thriving. I'm not quite thriving, I would say, because to me, thriving means that I am worry-free about my future.
Right.
I'm not quite there yet, but I am a half a step away from that. So I'm in a very good place right now, but I'm still full of ambition. I'm still seeking. I still have my radar out there for hints and ideas about what I can do to give more. I'm trying to give as much as I can. I'm trying to share as much of my story as possible. And I want to clarify something. I have this thing. It's almost like a mantra, and that mantra involves a little bit of self-interest, but a lot of interest for those outside there. Because to have a course, for example, an online course, and you charge money for it, there's a bit of egoism in that. You know, you have this expectation, or at least a very strong hope, that you can be successful, that you're important enough that people are going to listen.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of ego in that. But I'm trying to, and here comes my mantra, mantra, which side of the tracks are you on? I'm trying to do things that motivate me, inspire me, teach me enough so that I will become stronger, so that I'm better able to give back to my friends, my family, and myself. So in that mantra, the only element of that is for myself is at the very end. I want to get stronger, I want to get smarter, but I also want to turn that into an avenue through which I can give back. And that whole thing about giving back is very important to me, because I had moments in my life where I was not thriving and I was barely surviving because so much was being taken from me.
Right.
You know, whether it was my failed first marriage, whether it's my son from that marriage dying of a heroin overdose, whether it's being mentally terrorized as a child. You know, there's a lot of loss there. There's a lot of struggle to survive. And in some of those aspects, I don't see myself as having survived it. Parts of me are numb and dead because of those experiences. But again, as I talked about earlier, it's important to, either of our own accord or through the help of someone significant to us, to try and find elements that we can then learn from and use as ammunition to fire us forward or upward. So that's my process, and that process means this series of thriving. Something happens, or a memory that you're now dealing with brings you down to surviving, or maybe less than surviving. Maybe it's a detriment to your day-to-day life. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Overall, over time, if I go back to my childhood to today, I've definitely grown. I've definitely taken huge steps towards thriving. But again, I cannot say I'm thriving until I'm 100% free of worry about my future.
I guess it's like...
Can you help me with some water, please?
Sure.
Thank
absolutely.
you. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
I try not to ramble, but it's such a deep...
I don't think
so many elements to that answer.
No, and I don't think it is, because for me, like, every time you talk, you know, I reflect back to my own life. You know, am I also doing similar things?
And that's what I hope.
And I resonate with what you're saying.
And that's why I put my thing out there. I want people to think and see how they can apply it to their own situation. And again, it's not that I'm some kind of guru.
Right,
I don't expect anybody to follow everything I say, but I hope I'm putting something out there that can stimulate to introspection in the individual.
And I can definitely understand what you mean when you're going up and down and up and down. And also, like, sometimes you get those moments where your childhood memories of a certain horrible event that happened, and it puts you back in that space.
Sure.
So for me, you know, I'm teaching myself a lot about trauma and how I'm being trauma informed, and also helping myself, you know, because I've gone through so many traumas, and I'm still trying to figure out why things are happening around me. And Dr. Gay Momota is one of my most beloved, like, physicians that I'm following so much, and I would say he has absolutely
you mentioned him a lot,
he saved my life a lot, and also got me understanding deeper into my own sort of what he called adverse childhood experiences,
Yeah.
you know, and I started going through his resources on his website and looking and just educating myself around all this aspect, which is where I hear what you're saying, you know, you're trying, when that moment comes back into your life of that, you have to process it again, you know, because I think we've entered different stages in our life as we grow up as well. So
The thing is that those periods of just surviving or barely surviving, or not surviving. And when I say not surviving, I don't mean your heart stops beating and they bury you 6 feet under the earth. I'm talking about where you have lost all hope, where you don't, you can't do anything functional or positive for yourself. And I think we have a tendency to I mean, we can't help but be blinded. You know, we don't see the future. We don't see opportunity. We are in this moment, and it is in this moment that we struggle. It's in this moment that we don't see opportunity or hope or any chance. And that's why I want to see the black and brown population. I want to see everybody in the world, but for this podcast, I'm talking to people of color, to people who are so-called minorities here in Norway. I want to see us band together. I want to see us support one another, and I want to see us be vocal in that support, so that we can be that person or that element or that podcast or that media house that says or does something or has some sort of feature program or interview with a guest that reaches that person who is not thriving, the person who is barely surviving. But we, through our platforms, say or do something that catches their attention, and they're on that path upwards towards thriving. It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes a minority. But if we look at ourselves, there's nothing minor about us. We have ability. We have dreams. We have hopes. We know how to share. We know how to give. How is, and I get chills when I say this, how is it that I could meet this fantastic cameraman of yours for the first time, and I give him a hug like he's my brother?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's that kind of love, there's that kind of community in the so-called minorities here in this country. And again, I say there's nothing minor about us. We can be a major force for positive change.
There's a lady that I follow on LinkedIn, and forgotten her name already now, but she says that instead of calling us the minorities, we are actually the global majority, if you think about it.
Thank you.
And I think I think that's really interesting to think about it that way. And I think, like, when you talk about you know, we need a village, you know, and I think, like, that resonates with me so much, because I often say this wherever I go when I have the opportunity, is that it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to abuse a child. You know? And if you don't know where that comes from, it actually comes from a film called Spotlight, which is about this investigation about the Vatican. So for me, it was like your open call, you know, for, you know, this action amongst our community in all sense, the international community. I think action matters, because I've seen so many people come up on stage and saying, like, we're helping minorities, and I'm sorry I have to call this out, but it's complete bullshit sometimes when I see it, because it's like, so when I see people saying it, but then your next door neighbor or the person next to you, you're not helping them, or you are absolutely excluding someone from, you know, your funding applications, because you rather work with someone with a bigger name or whatever, you know. And I think that really saddens me. And sometimes I get to the moments where I think, I put all this effort, and it takes energy for both of us to create content, to do the things that we're doing.
It does.
And you start thinking, like, was it all worth it because I was trying to help my people, or, you know, people of color and minorities of the global majority here in Norway, and you start tumbling down, you know, this route. And I think, like, what matters for me was focusing on the people who are there. Like,
it's about. You know, again, I think we could be, rather than being minorities in Norway, we could be a major force for positive change if we were more vocal about our support for one another. And yes, you know, there come moments of frustration. You know, I'm the guy that always smiles, and I have these uplifting programs and whatnot. But you know, I get frustrated, I get sad and depressed, and the load gets heavy from time to time. But to be able to lean on that. This culture of people, you know, I'll shoot off a text message or give you a call and just talk for a minute. And I'm like, okay, I'm better. You know, it's using this network, you know, giving a hug to a young brother like this, you know, that it's uplifting. You know, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call my good friend Lexi Corin, and just, you know Lexi, don't you?
I think I heard about you talking about.
Yeah, she's been on my podcast 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So my point is that at the same time as I challenge other black and brown people, and even Norwegians in the greater sense, to support organizations like the Oslo Desk or me or whatever, you know, black or brown organization there is, we also, within this conglomerate of black and brown people, we also need to learn to lean on each other. You know, I have 5 or 6 different people in our little so-called subculture that I can just fire off a text to or call, and that's going to be enough to lift me up. And okay, here we go, next step, you know, and I'll be fine. That's what this community, that's what this village should be used for. This is what people support if they throw $1 a month to the Oslo Desk or to my efforts. I think that if we can get the word out that that's what we're all about, we're trying to shine a light on these areas of shadow. Who's not for that?
No, and I think
who will not support that? You know, we all support that. So let's do it, not just by words, but also with deeds.
I think like I sometimes feel like the work that we do, at times it may come out across as a threat, or you know, I often, like when I first talk about the Oslo Desk of what I was trying to create, I have some knee-jerk reactions quite often, you know? And I don't know if you received that, but
I've noticed, but it's understandable because you have met a lot of opposition. There's definitely a lack of public support, financial support for what you do. So I understand that frustration, but at the same time, my call to action is that we, meaning minorities, black and brown people in Norway, we can be our own medicine.
I think you have so much knowledge as well, you know, in I think in any sort of ethnic communities, black and brown, and, you know, my color, I guess. I try not to use yellow because, you know, I started reading the history of the word yellow, which was given a label from the West. But, you know, the Asian community in particular, we all have our own wisdoms that I started to really digging into a bit more. And I think, like you said, we lean on each other. And also, like, I'm bringing back to Dr. Gamer Mata again, because I'm really looking into a lot of his terminology, which he uses, which is co-regulating. So what that means when we're co-regulating is like we can talk about self-love and self-compassion and everything, but we really do need to have someone else there to support us, to kind of like also feel that dynamic and interaction in order
That's that feedback element.
Yeah, it's a feedback, also emotional, because like even with children, if you think back as kids, you know, I have a daughter, you know, she needs to figure out how she regulates the anger inside of her when she gets pissed off, right? So and me guiding her, we're always guiding both each other, that actually helps. And also one of the, you know, research has consistently said, like, the quality of our life is equivalent to the quality of our relationships. So what does that tell us?
That's
you know,
very
what does that say?
If we surround ourselves with love and positivity, that's pretty much what our life is going to be about.
Exactly.
But I want to add another element into that. You know, love and positivity is great, and that is very often expressed by word. Oh, I love Kaman. I love the Oslo Desk. Oh, I love John Allen. But can you put that out there as some form of action, whether it's by inviting each other onto one another's platforms, or giving that $1 a month donation, or going to a larger, more traditional media house and giving them a tip that, hey, why don't you interview Kaman about what she's doing? You know, action. You know, I can say I love you, but if I show you and do things that prove that I love you, there's a much greater effect to that.
No, I totally.
I think people understand that. I think people understand it, but I hope that my reminder of that fact puts people in motion, puts people in action. Because I believe that's what it's going to take in order for us to have the voice that we should have.
No, definitely action matters, you know.
Sure it does, you know, absolutely. I want us to be seen and heard.
Right,
I want us to the effect that I know the Oslo desk can have for this entire country. I want to see that happen. And that's not going to happen if people just say, oh, that's pretty cool what Kaman's doing with the Oslo desk. It's going to happen if people do these little steps that I'm talking about, these actions that lead to tangible results, to a tangible improvement, a tangible step towards thriving.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to activate people to do by putting out there what I put out there.
Cool.
It's a very direct message, and I think some people may get some people may get upset by that. But I'm sorry, it does take financial means to have success with the kind of work that you're doing, and we have to put words on that, and then we have to turn those words into tangible action.
I think I often find that time is the most precious thing, and why should we waste time going, around in circles, or what we say in British, beat around the bush? I think sometimes being direct, cut to the chase, this is what we're doing, and I think, then you cut back on wasting time. That's why I try not to waste my time on, literally even meeting certain people, or even, doing certain things that I feel like it's not getting to where I need to. And I think people's styles are differently as well. I want to accept that. But for me, I've always been very direct, or I try to be anyway. There are certain circumstances where I feel like if I don't have that privilege in that room, then I fall back a little bit, and I'll go a big round circle to get my point across. Yes. And then hopefully they'll understand. And if they don't, I'm going, okay, I've done my part. I'm gone. So I feel like at this point, for me, about my personal story. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I've gone through a lot last year.
Yes.
Really huge amount of stuff, and I've written, the LinkedIn reflection about a bit about last year as well. And
it's beautifully written, by the way.
And you promoted it, and you put a point that which is where I'm trying to push, which is what you're trying to push, is that if we allow space for people, to be themselves and have that compassion and consideration for other people, we can all survive this alone. Together, we can thrive together. And I don't think we need to be put it into, white Norwegians versus the minorities and so forth in that sense. And I just really, really want us to, we're living, in a society right now where we are hit by pandemic. We don't know what else is going to be hitting us. Electricity bills are rising up the hills, and, I'm pretty sure people are, on that survival stage, and not just minorities, but obviously Norwegians themselves are doing that. So why can't we just have an honest talk? Why can't we just talk? And for every single person, even Norwegians, to kind of go through that fear state, what they're fearing, that we've gone through ourselves, that we actually had to go through that process, that they should also try to go through that process themselves and come to the point where they see us at a different eye. Because I feel like with the knee-jerk reactions that we're getting most of the time is because that they are reflecting, or they're kind of what's the word? They kind of taking their fear out on us in some ways.
Well, let me address a knee-jerk reaction that I see. This whole conversation I've been talking about both the plight and the success among black and brown people, or so-called minorities here in Norway. So a lot of Norwegians will hear me saying, black, brown, minority, and they think, oh my gosh, this guy hates Norwegians.
Exactly.
That's a knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly, yeah.
And I want to put it out there that that's the wrong reaction, because I love everybody, and my message is for everybody. My content is for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think people should allow for us to speak freely amongst ourselves. Also, we who are the so-called minority, we have a shared experience, and I'm not going to say I'm sorry, because I'm not. I don't really care if that offends an ethnic Norwegian, but I do think it's sad.
Yeah,
because just that we shine a light again on the areas of shadow within our community, which is somewhat separate from the overall Norwegian community, even though we have a foot in that community, both you and I. We do have our own so-called sub-community. And just because we're talking about that and shining a light in that area does not mean it's to the detriment of the overall Norwegian society. Quite the opposite. I propose that if the most suppressed, or the most unhappy, or the poorest in Norwegian society, if they have it a little bit better, that's to the benefit of the greater Norwegian society. There's a symbiosis. And it's not like there's a wall between immigrants and Norwegians.
Yeah.
There is somewhat of a perceived barrier, but it's quite fluid. And I step across daily. I'm married to a samisk, Norwegian samisk lady, for God's sakes. So I hope that people listening to this conversations and conversations like it don't automatically throw up the hand and say, "Oh, this isn't for me."
Right.
Or, "Oh, this is against me." Please don't do that, people. Don't do that.
No, I mean, exactly. You hit the nail on that. I think,
it's an important message to put out there.
Exactly, and I think
this is not an exclusionary conversation.
No, exactly not. And I think with Norway, we are living in a very multicultural society today, and I think we have to be inclusive. And for me, like, I have, had some Norwegian friends of mine who has been extremely supportive during, my time of my operation, and that was very heartfelt. And I don't want them to feel like, when I'm doing this kind of work, it's kind of telling them there's something crap or something. This country is bad in all its ways. But I think like we're trying to better the society.
Well, yeah,
and I don't think that is a bad thing.
No, and the Norwegian society is not going to get better. How do I say this? The minority community in Norway is not going to have it very much better unless the greater Norwegian society opens up and accepts that. And the basis for me saying that is something that Chris Rock said about 10 years ago. He was being interviewed by somebody, I cannot remember who it was, but they asked him, how do you feel now that Black Americans have gotten their civil rights? And Chris Rock said, we haven't gotten our civil rights. They've always been there. He says it's not so much a picture of Black people having a better life. It is a picture of white people being less crazy. And the way he said it with his delivery, it was quite funny. But I think that is addressing the fact that the greater society, in this case the ethnic Norwegian society, has to become more accepting of minorities in order for minorities to have more equality. We can fight, we can do as much as we want, we can do as much internal networking as we want, but if doors remain closed to us, doors remain closed to us.
Right, exactly.
There's gatekeepers there that have to come over to our side. So this message, of course it should be spoken on amongst us, but we also have to speak it to the greater Norwegian society. And that goes back to what I was talking about if I see what you're doing at the Oslo desk and I think it's great, I should send a tip to TV2, for example. Now, I don't know the chances of them having you on for a talk, but you see what I'm saying? I should refer your work to an element of society or an element of media out there in the mainstream,
right,
in order to shine a light on what you're doing. That's what we need to do for each other.
I think so, and I think I don't want to shut out all the people who are working for TV2 or NRK and so forth, but it's just like
I know some beautiful people. I've been on I just want to say this, I've been on TV2. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
I've been on TV2 and NRK a lot, during their prime news sending. I've been on many of their radio programs, so I know there's some beautiful people there who will give us a voice because they've given me a voice. But it's not enough. Yeah,
and I think for me it's the representation that they have and what they hold. And it's very different from the way I approach journalism. I think often traditional media is good for a certain extent, but gatekeeper by itself, often they say the newsrooms are the gatekeepers. I prefer saying that they should be gate openers. So with the Oslo desk, we're gate openers. We're not gatekeepers. We don't we don't think like we are the holder of truth. I think everyone has their own truth.
Very well said.
And that is a problem that I find with how these newsrooms are run, and that's where there's a slight difference. And of course I want to talk to them. It's not to say I don't want to. I would love to talk to people from TV2, NRK, and the other newspapers if they're willing to be open.
Exactly.
Now, I don't want to walk into being re-traumatized, sitting in front of white Norwegians or whoever, and I had to tell them and explain to an extent of what I mean by what I say, and why I'm fighting this, and have been for the last 5 years. And most of the time, I'm kind of like pushed on the leaf here, or trying to cause some issue, which is not what I want to do.
Sure.
You know,
and that's very understandable. But there's a polar, not necessarily a polar opposite, there's also an element of minorities here in Norway who would look at somebody like me, who gets interviewed on NRK, and they'll call me a traitor. And it's like, hold on, my brother or my sister,
Right.
did you watch that segment, and did you hear what I said? What was I promoting? What message did I put out there? Am I a traitor? Or did I, through the grace of God or luck or whatever, get to speak our story on their microphone?
And could you
Do you see what I'm saying?
imagine? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, could you imagine if a child is growing up who's black here, seeing you on TV for the first time? Wouldn't that
Thank
be
you.
Wouldn't they be like, oh wow, that's a role model there? Because I'm here in Norway, and I'm looking at people from NRK, you know, TV2 and stuff. And I'm looking at, is there one representing me up there? And there's very few of them, and I know some as well. And I think that is a problem within our community as well, the international ones, or even the black community, where we start calling people traitors amongst each other as well. I get called out too.
Well, I think it's jealousy. I think it's jealousy, and I think it's unresolved trauma.
Absolutely, I think so too. In some ways,
it's you can almost say, from an American perspective, it's almost a slave mentality. The slave who worked in the big house could have been a traitor. Maybe he's whispering to the slave master about the plans you're making out there in the fields to escape or to revolt or whatever. But why assume that? How do you know that house slave is not saying or doing things to hopefully influence the slave master to make things better for those of you who are out in the fields? Right. I don't know if that fits. I don't know if that'll offend people, but I'm trying to paint a picture that says that you shouldn't assume that just because you see a black and brown face on mainstream media that they're a traitor.
I think
you have to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And if people listen to everything I said on TV2 or NRK, I've been speaking. Almost every incident was speaking in direct response to atrocities that were propagated against black Americans back home in the States.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said. I think it goes down.
Can you help me with some water?
Goes down to trauma or something within. I think sometimes when we see reactions and trolls, we get quite a lot
it's
of
trauma.
trolls.
I think it's unresolved trauma.
I think it is unresolved
which manifests
trauma.
itself in jealousy.
Right, exactly, and it can manifest in anger and all sorts of things as well. And so for me, I was often looking at someone's reaction, like, what does that actually say at the end of the day?
Well, yeah, my message to sum up that little less than positive segment of our conversation is stop it. Stop. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Stop with the jealousy.
Yeah.
And I say this because that happened to me. I got some people who started to put some narrative out that I was some sort of sellout, or I had turned my back on the minority community here in Norway. But on the other side, I got tons of positive feedback and love from a lot of brothers and sisters out there. So stop with the negativity, people. Stop with that. And it goes back to us being a tight-knit community that doesn't have our voice heard the way it should. And we have to support one another. I would rather, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But, it's about representation. I hope that some little black, maybe an African immigrant or a young black American child who's living here in Norway saw me on that microphone and realized, oh, I can. That door is not completely closed to us.
Yeah.
It may be kind of rusty, the hinges of that door, it might be a little rough to get it open,
Yeah.
but it's not closed to us. I hope that that's how they feel when they see me speaking on those platforms.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John Allen, for coming on the TODcast. We have to wrap up this time.
There's never enough time. Never enough time.
And I'm sure we can go on forever. But thank you again for, telling us your thoughts and also, giving us your tips and advices as you go along with
Thank you.
With your life and your journey here, actually, in a way. So
I'm going to be putting my story out there again in the hopes that it can motivate someone, inspire someone, or motivate me and inspire me to make me stronger so that I can better help my friends, my family, and myself. And I hope that that can be applied to whether you're black, white, Norwegian or not. I hope something in that journey, in my telling of my story, can help somebody.
Thank you so much.